Hello and welcome to Designing Visuals. My name is Dave Dalton and I'm the instructor of the course. The best way to get a hold of me during the term is through my Kent State email address at ddalton@kent.edu. I'm generally pretty assiduous in responding to emails in a timely fashion, so if you don't get a response to me within 24 hours, please resend the email or feel free to call me at the 330-577-5286 Google Voice number on the screen here. What that will do if you leave a message is transcribe your message and send me an email. But it'll come from a Google account, so the chances of it being missed twice are pretty remote. A second pathway to our communication, a very important one, is through the website that you're at now, folioweb.org/itech/desvisweb. On the home page, you'll find an announcements box, and in that announcements box, I'll keep you posted about deadlines and other important course information. Also on folioweb.org, you'll find the feedback page where you'll log in and check your grades as your assignments are graded and posted. And you'll also use folioweb.org to upload your assignments, and we'll cover that in the next video. Basically, this course is designed to cover two major components. The first is sort of an overview or dabbling with the industry leading visual design platform, Adobe Photoshop. Unfortunately, the full version of Photoshop is $900, and even with a substantial $600 educational discount, it's still $300, and that puts it out of the price range of most folks. So what we're going to use instead is Adobe Photoshop Elements, which is sort of the little brother of Photoshop. Now, it has almost all the same features. It's missing high-end features on the website and high-end features in pre-press printing, but for most people, it has kind of a little cuter interface. It's a little easier to use, and it has much lower price tag. The second major component of the course is to apply visual design principles to the kinds of instructional material design that you'll do over the next few years of your career, including brochures, newsletters, even letters, as well as websites, video, and multimedia presentations of different kinds. The pedagogy in this course is quite a bit different than probably what you're used to. We'll be using an inductive approach through which we'll provide you with a challenge or a problem and ask you to kind of muddle your way through it until afterwards, when we kind of tell you what was underfoot here, what was the principle at stake here. Now, obviously we won't grade you down for not having known that principle, but by tackling the problem, struggling through it, and then finding out kind of a better way of doing it, you'll have a whole heck of a lot more of aha moments. The traditional rule-egg approach, where we sort of give you the rule and ask you to produce the examples, doesn't really work very well in my experience with creative or artistic tasks, because people will very often just produce the example back to you. You'll end up getting the same thing back without them really trying to apply creative processes in tackling it. I'm going to ask you to deal with a book related to Adobe Photoshop Elements. Now, I don't like to say that this is optional, because that just sort of means a whole bunch of people will skip it entirely. I'm not going to ask you to turn in anything from the book, but I've been working with Photoshop since it was version 2 in the early 90s, about 1990 in fact, and I can honestly tell you that there is no way to learn the software by dabbling. It is a very feature-rich tool, and you need a systematic approach to learn it. The best compromise book I've found is the one that's listed on the screen here from the Aquint creative team. It's called Adobe Photoshop Elements Digital Classroom. They have a whole series of digital classroom books on most high-end tools. But what's good about this book is that it comes with a DVD with lots of video training materials. It has a very good structured approach. They lay out the skills in a nice organized way. And frankly, it's a couple of bucks cheaper than some of its alternatives, although it's not a very expensive book. Now, again, you don't have to use this book. What I would strongly encourage you to do, and I will be less than sympathetic if you're emailing me and saying, I don't know what's going on. Well, did you read the book? Nope. Well, there you go. I would strongly encourage you to use a structured approach to learning elements. Okay. Now, fortunately, Kent State subscribes to OhioLink, and one of the services of OhioLink is a service called Safari Textbooks Online. And there's a link to that on the website, our course website. And there are about 10,000 different textbooks, and many, probably this one, But certainly there's another one called Adobe Photoshop Elements Missing Manual that's also very good. That is definitely available at Safari Textbooks. So for free, you can read and learn all you like about many subjects, including Elements. The only downside of that is that you can't download or print the books. You have to read on screen, and for obvious reasons. So if you can deal with not having the book in hand but reading off the screen, you can save yourself the cost of the book by using Safari Textbooks online. We're also going to ask you to purchase Adobe Photoshop Elements. There is a workaround here as well. It's a risky strategy. Adobe offers free 30-day trial versions of all of their software titles. The Photoshop Elements 30-day trial is a fully functional version of the software, but it does expire exactly 30 days after you install it. It turns into a pumpkin. You must type in a serial number at that point to continue to use the software. Now, I've designed the schedule in such a way that it will accommodate barely the 30-day use of the software. If you count backwards from the day of the last assignment due to the day of the first assignment due, it turns out that it's exactly 30 days. That's pretty risky, because if something goes just a little awry, even by a few hours, you'll be left in July with no software to use. You can't just uninstall it and reinstall it, because the Windows registry will remember that it was installed and it won't permit you to go forward. So it's a risky strategy. If money's really tight and you need to save the $60 or $70 of the cost of the software, I would try it, but be prepared to run to Best Buy and buy a copy of Elements if you run into trouble. So the cost of Elements I mentioned, $120 list, but don't pay retail. Buy it on sale. Shop around. It's almost always on sale someplace, at Micro Center or Best Buy. Target sells it, Office Max, Staples, and certainly online resellers like Amazon always have a deal on it. The last month or so I've seen it for about $60, $59.99 at lots of different places. I would not spend more than $70 on it, unless you get something bundled with it, a freebie of some kind. So if you buy the book and the software, that's probably the safest approach, but it's the most expensive, and you can get away without buying either one if you're willing to be a little bit of a risk taker. You'll also need a FolioWeb account, which you probably have by now, or you wouldn't be watching this video. The FolioWeb account is a free web space. It does a lot of other things, course management system and some other things. It's free for life, and the only caveat there is that you must keep your Kent State email active, and even that's not critical except for some features of FolioWeb. So if you haven't registered, be sure to go to folioweb.org and click on registration, and you'll be set to go. So there are 13 design problems that will be sort of exercises that will expose us inductively to those design principles, as I mentioned earlier. Those are worth 5 points each, and the modal or most common grade received by students on those is a 4 out of 5. So they're not particularly rigorously graded. They're you do your best and you'll receive very close to full credit. 1 out of those 13, problem 8, is a read-only. There's nothing to do for that one besides read a few pages. It's about typography and fonts. And so really you have to turn in 12 of these to get the 60 points. There's a design critique, and this is a makeover project. You will find a design, typically a magazine layout or advertisement is the best source. And you'll find one that has a few problems. You'll learn what to look for in terms of what's good, and you'll find one that isn't quite so good. And you'll scan that layout with a desktop scanner, and you'll open up that file in Photoshop Elements and annotate with the text tool what you think is good or bad on that design. You'll just type directly on it using layers, and we'll see how to do that in an upcoming video. So you'll annotate to critique the before part of that design. And then the challenging part is then to deconstruct the design, open it up again, and separate out the various text and visual elements of design into separate layers into Photoshop. It's basically just sort of select, copy, paste, and it makes layers. And then you'll rearrange the layers and you have carte blanche to do whatever you wish to this design. So if you're doing a remake of an advertisement for Crest toothpaste, you don't have to use their font, their logo, their image of toothpaste, although those are probably not great decisions, but you don't have to do anything that was in the original design. You can start over. But of course, the secret to doing this is to find just the right balance between a few things that need to be improved and starting over and working with a blank slate. You don't want to have to do the work of a fully paid graphic design professional. You just want to have to noodle the design a little bit. Good sources of these sort of not so great designs are very often in fashion magazines, homemaking magazines like Women's Days and those kinds of things. Tech magazines tend to have pretty terrible layouts, frankly, and you can find some good non-examples there. Things to avoid here. Avoid a design that is overly complex or overly difficult, because to the deconstruction part will take you a long time. Probably avoid a design that has large amounts of minuscule text, because when you reconstruct it, you won't get and scan it, you won't get very satisfying results. And also, a really important thing to avoid is what's called a photo illustration, where the layout is essentially just a big photograph. A classic example of this is a watch ad. When you're shopping for a high-end watch, Movado or an Omega or a Cartier or something like that, chances are the ad company has a big honking picture of the watch because they want you to see the watch in all of its glory in the ad. That's a photo illustration. It's a photograph that has a small amount of text on it. And really the only thing you can critique there is the quality of the photograph, and chances are it's a pretty darn good photograph. Now, reconstructing it gets to be even more problematic, because you're sort of obligated, if you say it's not a very good photograph, to produce a better one. And these are professional photographers with very expensive digital cameras and studio lighting and all kinds of other stuff. So the odds of you being able to produce a better photo illustration than you find in a magazine layout is pretty remote. So you want to avoid an ad that's largely photo illustration. And again, there's a video on how to do the design critique, and some examples of befores and afters that will be made available to you shortly. So the secret again is Goldilocks. Not so bad, not so good, but something that you can work with. Scan it in relatively high resolution and then just kind of go to town on it and work through it. The culminating project for the course is what we call a design portfolio, and this is a chance to integrate all of the design skills that you've learned up to this point. We're going to ask you to do 3 pieces worth 10 points each. A web page mock-up. Now this is just an image that you'll produce in Elements that will have the look of a web page. That is, it'll have navigation elements, text elements, probably some images. It won't actually be a web page. It'll just look like one. So, there won't be anything to click on. It'll just look like there's things to click on. You'll produce this in Elements, not a web editor. Some people call this a wireframe, and programs like Dreamweaver work very well with this wireframe concept. That is, graphic design professionals produce the wireframe, and then web developers take the wireframe and turn it into a fully functional website. The second portfolio piece is a custom PowerPoint background, and that's kind of what you're seeing here on this video, the Designing Visuals logo in the upper left there, and some sort of more traditional PowerPointy things along the bottom there. This is not a very good one. Hopefully you'll be able to produce something that's a little bit more visually interesting, more elements, more creativity than this. This just tends to work pretty good for the small videos that we use on the Folio website. The third piece is a persuasive communication, and what a persuasive communication is typically a flyer. Let's think about flyer as an example. A flyer you might find under your windshield wiper in a parking lot or in your mailbox, and the persuasive part of it is that they're trying to convince you to do something. Attend a meeting, join a cause, buy a pizza. They're trying to persuade you, and you can kind of imagine that the more visually interesting they are, the more persuasive they're going to be. So if there's an advertisement for pizza and it says come buy our pizza, and there's not a picture of a mouth-watering pizza, you know what, I'm going to wait on that pizza. So a persuasive communication is designed to persuade you to do something, and you have 2 choices here. A flyer And a flyer is really just a one-sided mock-up of something. It could be designed to be printed bulk at 8.5 by 11 and put under windshields or in mailboxes. Or it could be a miniature version of a poster that you were going to produce at 24 by 36 inches or larger. It could even be a miniature of a billboard that you typically have, rotated horizontally in landscape mode orientation. That might be quite a bit more horizontal than it is vertical, maybe an aspect ratio of 3 units wide or 4 units wide for every 1 unit high. So it doesn't have to be 8.5 by 11. It can be whatever size you want it to be, but it's a one-sider. Again, integrating visual design principles, images, text elements, those kinds of things into an interesting and compelling persuasion. A second option, if you're a little bit more ambitious here, is to think about a brochure. Again, with a caveat that you're not using a Microsoft Publisher or some other desktop publishing tool. You're using Photoshop Elements. You're starting from scratch. You're not using somebody's cheesy template and color scheme. You're doing it from the ground up. You're choosing the images. You're choosing the type. You're choosing what other elements you put in it. The challenge of doing a brochure is that you have at least 2 integrated panels, a front and a back, or maybe 4, a front and back, and middle, page 2 and page 3. If you have a multiple fold brochure, you have the relationship of how someone actually navigates. They open up the front page and then they see the double truck spread, and then the back page integrates with that somehow. So you have some complexities, but if you're looking at tackling a brochure for some other purpose, this is a great opportunity to use this course assignment to tackle that project. Okay, now there is an elegancy that you can find in synergy in this course. That is, if you find a way to pull things together and treat it all as one big project, A, you'll find it a lot less frustrating, and B, you'll find it a lot more authentic. Here's what I mean. Let's say that you were producing designing a communication package for a new business. Well, one of the problems is going to ask you to design a logo type. Well, you've designed a logo type and you've designed a collage where you've assembled and arranged images. And now you have to do a web page mock-up. Oh, a web page for this business. I have to do a custom PowerPoint background. Maybe I'm going to use that to present a business plan. So I'm going to use the same logo and the same colors and the same type treatment. And I have to produce some flyers or some posters to persuade people to come to this business or do whatever. So these 3 pieces could be 3 marketing pieces or identity pieces for some sort of agency, school. Frankly, I think it works best if it's a business. Business is just a very clean way of thinking about advertising, and they're there to sell, and you kind of got sell services, sell products. It's pretty easy to think that through. So let me give you just one example, and I'm sorry I am going to do this orally and not visually. But perhaps the coolest logo I've ever seen is actually a business right here in Kent. And the reason I think it's cool, it may not be the most visually stunning, but it's just so darn smart. So you have to kind of picture this in your mind. It's a square logo divided vertically in half. On one half it's green, and on the other half it's white. And there is a tree, a pine tree, in the middle, and one half of the pine tree is green and the other half is white. On the green side of the logo is a white half of the pine tree, and on the white side of the logo is a green half of the pine tree. The name of the business is Green and White Landscaping and Plowing. And the reason that this is so smart is you just look at the logo, you wouldn't need the text at all to know exactly, you see a truck with this logo on the side that's got a snowplow on the front, and you get exactly what they do for a living. It's very cool visually. I mean, it's a very nice logo, it's attractive, but it's smart and it's communication value. In 1 second, you know everything about that business. Green and White Landscaping, when it's winter and the trees are white, they plow. And in spring, when the trees turn green, they landscape. So now if you were using that as your logo in the design problem, I believe it's problem 12 or 11, you produce that logo. You produce some variations of that logo, and you've got some feedback, and you've got a good logo going for you. Now you take that logo and you put it on a web page. And that web page logo is an important part of the identity of this new business. And you have some buttons that take you to different services that company provides, and maybe some images of somebody raking and shoveling or plowing, and you get your web page done. You do the same basic thing. You take the logo and color scheme and type, and you've got your PowerPoint background. You make a flyer with the same logo and type and colors, and you've got a flyer or a brochure that describes what that company does. So the elegancy is if you can find a way to tie these various portfolio pieces and even some of the design problems together into a rolling kind of enterprise identity. Okay, one important kind of, I've just seen this fizzle, and students have tried this over the years, and it just doesn't seem to work. Someone says, well, I can't come up with anything. I can't, I don't have a business in mind, and so I'm just going to make a logo out of my name. Well, there's an inherent problem with that. What do you get when you go to www.davedalton.com? What does that mean? I get Evergreen Landscaping. I know what they do. Right away, just the idea of the name of their business starts to trigger my creativity into thinking how I could visually represent that. It's very hard for me to see your name on a piece of paper and start having some visual connotations of what it is that you're like and do and whatever. Now, I'm a little fortunate in that my initials are DD, and I've done some logo types using my initials. But unless you have some interesting initials, and there aren't that many, Zora Zebovich and has two Z's, starts to look like ZZ Top maybe, it's difficult to kind of come up with something inherently interesting in just a proper noun. So if you are going to go with this approach of synergy, where you're really trying to pull these things together and do something unified, fake it. A pizza business, a restaurant, maybe you've always wanted to open a travel agency or a consulting business. But stay away from the idea of the personal name. It's difficult to create a good visual connotation from that. Come up with the name of your enterprise and work backwards from there. Okay. Now, I've also provided you with a few readings which are completely optional, and I realize that probably that means nobody will do them, or almost nobody. But I have students from time to time say they want to learn more, they want to engage in a little bit higher level thinking. So I've made some interesting, what I think are interesting articles available, some more so than others probably, but some things if you're looking for some not so light, a little bit more intellectual summer reading, and you're finding things a little too mechanical and you want to take it to a 35,000 foot level, there's some readings for you to peruse, linked on the resources page, and really up to you whether you want to do them or not. Okay, so let's review our procedures here very briefly. For our design problems, the problem goes live at 9 a.m. The link will be live. It won't be live until, you might be live a little bit earlier than that, but early in the morning, the day that the assignment is assigned. You'll produce 4 variations to solve that design problem from that web page that goes live. You'll use Adobe Photoshop Elements to produce those variations, and you'll upload those variations to Folio or FolioWeb DesViz web folder by the due date and time. And that's of course very critical. If the assignment is released at 9, it's due at 8, it gives me an hour to finish upgrading. Otherwise the whole inductive pedagogy won't work. You'll get feedback immediately during that window. If you do the assignment the night before, chances are I'm kind of hovering around looking for stuff to grade, and you can have your feedback early if you do it that way. But certainly early in the morning you need your feedback before you can start the next project. That's the foundation of this inductive approach, is immediate practice and feedback. It doesn't work unless we do it that way. You'll check your feedback, and if you should need to redo a project, it's usually not necessary. But occasionally, middle, 2/3 of the way through a semester, a student will just have a really bad day where they forget everything that they've learned. It just happens. And they end up doing stuff that's just terrible, not at all on track, and they tank on the assignment. And tanking is a 1, 2, or 3. If you get less than a 4, you have the opportunity to redo it. Again, the highest grade you can get if you redo assignment is a 4. Early on, if you're just not on track, you don't know what's going on, what I'll usually say to you is I won't grade the assignment. I'll just say, please redo it. You didn't follow the directions. You didn't know what was expected of you. So I'll just say, redo the assignment, and I'll give you some tips on what's gone wrong here. Okay, so to get started, what we're going to do is purchase or purchase or download the free 30-day trial version of Photoshop Elements. Again, if you're using the 30-day trial, be very careful not to install it too early or you'll run out of time. By the way, I really don't recommend you do this. I certainly wouldn't put myself in that situation, but I just, it's an option that students find, and so I have to sort of acknowledge that. Learn Photoshop Elements. Again, I think Digital Classroom is the best compromise between cost and thoroughness of the materials, and it's a good book. I like their approach. I have the whole series for almost all the tools. So start learning Photoshop Elements. On the course schedule, I have keyed some of the chapters in this book to where we're at in the course to kind of give you a schedule, but really it's just getting through the book and learning the tool. You'll find it much less painful to do the projects if you go through this kind of approach. Soon, download the grid templates. They're linked from the resources page, and look at the second video, which will show you how to work with those design grid templates in Elements to complete your design problems. And then tackle problem 1. Now, of course, if you have any questions on any of these procedures, the best thing to do is email me immediately so we can get you on track. So let's conclude today with just some general guidelines to make your time in the course more productive and the procedures clearer. You must post all your materials correctly to your DesViz web folder in your Folio web account, and they must be on time. And let me just elaborate on this for just a moment. Summer is a difficult time for public school folks. You've waited to get postponed getting important stuff done, and there's typically commencements and summer vacations and a lot of things that you're juggling. I'm very sympathetic to that need to juggle, but unfortunately, given the structure of this course and the pedagogy, I cannot be flexible with work that is late. The work must be done on time if you want credit on it. And again, it's because if you don't have the work done, you don't learn through this inductive approach. So you can't get ahead and you can't stay behind. You've got to be on time. It's very critical in this course. So this course is again offered in fall. It's again offered next summer online. If you have events going on in your life and you can't take time to complete the course activities on a laptop while you're on the road or through some other means, you're really going to have to reconsider your participation in the course and delay it, because there really is nothing I can do to be flexible with vacations and that kind of thing. So you want to check the course announcements every day. You want to use Folio Web to check your feedback when the projects are due. And again, an important admonition here is to avoid using the designs or content or even color schemes or type treatments that you've found. And I'll give you just one example of how this came up recently, and it's a good thing to avoid. A student in this course last summer was really thinking correctly about that whole synergy concept, designing a business, a bakery business, and kind of got stuck with the logo, so she went out and surfed around a little bit and she found a really good logo, and that was her inspiration. She used the clip art and she used her own type, but the logo to me clearly did not look like something that the student had done, so I also did a Google search and found the original logo. That's plagiarism. You cannot use the creative efforts of anybody else. You don't get to use clip art except in the few places where I say it's okay. You're expected to do original work on all elements of the course. If you have any questions about that, please email me and I'll get back to you right away. When in doubt, do not use anybody else's work. It's just a very, very simple rule here to avoid the very severe consequences that come with acts of plagiarism at the university level. Now, the last idea is going to strike you probably a little odd after we've gone through all the sort of introductory business, but I hear probably about 50% of the students in this course at one level or another say, I'm not creative. I never did well in art. I don't like art. I don't like making art. I'm not good at this stuff. And I'd respond to that in a couple of different ways. First of all, you probably gave up for lots of reasons trying to do it early on in your life. Most people stop when they sort of discover that they can't do it, or they're discouraged from doing it, and they move on to other things in their life. I use the example that I have recently quit trying to play in the NBA because I just figure that 5'11" and 52, I'm not going to make it anytime soon. So the sort of natural human reaction is that if we're not good at something, we find other things to pursue where we might be good. So most people stop early and then don't have the same experience with creative things that they have with other endeavors in their life. So in other words, you just haven't had the opportunity. You will here. The second reason is that even after that point, if you've been an educator for a period of time, the aesthetics that you've worked with have been all related to efficiency. That is, it's been how many words can I get on this worksheet because Xeroxing costs money? How many words can I get on this overhead transparency because I only have a budget for a certain number of those? It's about getting stuff crowded because crowded is more efficient. Well, one of the design principles, I'll tell you right now, is less is more. Artists know that you can do a heck of a lot with a whisper that you can't do with a scream. So they use white space and they use all areas. One of the sort of famous inventions of Da Vinci was the activation of all areas of the canvas. So there wasn't a foreground, background. There was all of the canvas pulled into the artwork. So the principles that you've been working under have been in some ways antithetical to good principles of design. You will see some good examples of that. I don't want to go down this road anymore because we're going to spoil our inductivity if we do that. But the 2 points I'm making is again, one, you probably haven't practiced as much as you have practiced in other endeavors in your life. And secondly, when you have done design, you've been doing design under some sort of anti-principles of design. They've been principles of efficiency and economics, not principles of design. So you have some unlearning to do and then some hopefully exciting new learning to do as well. So that's why I say the most important thing to do during this effort is to relax. Give it your best shot. Go with the flow. Don't be angry. Don't be frustrated. Just say, it's something new. It's something I don't know. Let's see how this goes. And to that end, what I suggest to you is play around a little bit. Force yourself out of your box and say, you have to do 4 variations on these projects. As you'll see in the second video, they're generally pretty darn quick. But on one, force yourself on one of the variations to do something weird, deliberately weird. So, gosh, I don't know what he wants me to do here. I know he doesn't want me to do this, so I'll do it anyway. Do something that you know is off track or strange or something you wouldn't ordinarily do. I don't want to say purple polka dots because I don't like them. Hard to make a design out of polka dots that makes any sense. But okay, make polka dots if that's what you're going to do sometime, just to see what polka dots do for you. So play. Give yourself permission to play, and what that means is break free of your past learning, break free of your structure and your inhibitions, and do something that's just a little wild and a little weird. So relax, have some fun, play around a little bit, and I think you'll find that the stuff washes over you a little bit more if you have that mindset. If there's anything I can do to help you in the process, please contact me right away and we'll work through those concerns. In the meantime, enjoy this semester and have some fun.